What I always loved about Sega was right when video games were exploding for the first time during the 1990s, they made their boxes all uniform, and they had the same design, like the stripes in the background, the stripes on the Sega boxes. I just loved how they used the same logo, even though it was a different system, and I loved how there was silver on it sometimes. And sometimes there wasn't, as you can see here. The Sega Genesis game boxes were so rad. They were just so cool and 90s looking. So you got the silver here. I loved the Sega Saturn boxes. The designs here on the side. It's like they all had similar labels. And it was really a marvel to look at. And looking back at how they did it, now when you have old Sega game boxes from the 1990s, it feels like it was part of the Sega Empire that was being formed. Like now these are relics, these are artifacts from a bygone era of pop culture where Sega was dominating as a company and they were on top of the pyramid. They were so proud of themselves, and you knew when you had this label with the stripes, it was a Sega game. And back in the day, game boxes felt like events. And back in the day, they used to have people that painted the boxes, the art for the boxes. And they don't have artists paint the covers anymore. There was so much detail put into the labeling. Yes, the Sega Empire. And I don't have any 32X games, unfortunately. I actually love the fact that Sega had a lot of game consoles around the same time. I understand that people look back on that and think it flooded the market and shit, and it was Sega's demise. I disagree. It was just their demise because of the way they handled each console, but I'm glad each console existed. The 32X was a great game system. The problem was the way they used the 32X, how they handled the 32X. That was why it kind of failed. But to me, the 32X, the Sega CD, Sega Saturn, these are consoles that were amazing. It was not a bad thing that they existed. It was just bad the way they were handled. That was the thing. And that's why Sega loyalists go back to something like the Sega CD and realize it was a great game system. Same thing with the Game Gear. Same thing with the Sega Saturn. And by the way, this is a fan-created cover of what was going to be one of the original covers for Sonic X-treme. Kind of looks like the real deal. Sega Saturn, look at that labeling. Primal Rage. Because it just felt like a continuation from the Genesis. It just felt like the fact that the Saturn boxes were bigger and longer. Wow, here's the next thing from the Genesis. Wow, look at that. The way the box looks. It's futuristic, it's shiny. You can see your reflection on the covers. And the Genesis boxes didn't have that, and it just felt like it was the next level. And that was one of the slogans for Sega, welcome to the next level. Sega was always ahead of the game. The only problem was that they didn't know how to handle the game when it came to handling their consoles. That was the problem. And the console they handled the best was the Genesis. But that doesn't mean the other Sega consoles were a mistake or that they were bad. They were great game systems, and I'm really happy we have all of them because now we have the legacy of Sega. Now we have all this stuff that we can look back on and look at it as the Sega legacy, the Sega Empire, how it was. Isn't that amazing that we have that experience now? The Sega Empire. You know how you have the Roman Empire? This was the Sega Empire, and it was legendary. Sega wanted to make their mark on the game industry. Another thing I truly love is that even down to the nitty-gritty detail, they still chose the same color for the rating. You got the purple for that, red for this. Well, they didn't do it for this, but blue, Sega CD. Isn't that cool that they thought of that? Red for the Genesis. It was a special time to be a video game fan. Having all these game consoles, it made it seem like Sega was never going to fail because it made it seem like they had a monopoly on the games industry. That's what it seemed like to people. And for a window of time, they did have that. And that's why we should really cherish Sega as a game company because even though they made mistakes down the line, they did succeed as a game company. Like, they didn't become this total failure of a game company that people keep always trying to narrate as the story of Sega, because they did accomplish what they wanted. And no, they didn't defeat Nintendo, and I know that was one of their ultimate goals, but it wasn't their only one. Their ultimate goal was to stand out and to make an impression on gamers. That was the ultimate goal of Sega, and they succeeded at that goal. Because to this day, you still have people that remember the Sega game systems. You still have people that buy the old Sega game systems, love the old Sega game boxes. So they succeeded in making a legacy for themselves, because we see it right here. We see it in our collections. We have it in our memories. They did succeed as a game company. And I still think they should make a new Sega Dreamcast console. That would be amazing. I still think it's possible. I honestly do. I also don't think it would be as difficult as people make it out to be. You just need a little more faith, instead of being so pessimistic about it. Yes, look at that. Sega Saturn. So this is my little tribute video to Sega as a game company, and how I love that if you have a collection, you can put all the boxes together showing the Sega Empire and the labeling and the colors, and how proud they were that this was what it was going to be. Got all the game systems together. Look at that. The Sega, dominating the game industry. Space Jam for the Sega Saturn. And they even made room for the company that made the game, that published the game. So this is an Acclaim game, and they put their name at the top. There's just something extremely satisfying about seeing all of them together. It's kind of like putting together Voltron or the Megazord, putting together all the Power Rangers together, all the different colors of the Rangers, the White Ranger, the Blue Ranger, the Red Ranger, the Pink Ranger, the Yellow Ranger, which I don't have, a 32X game, and there wasn't a green label. There was so many Sonic games out, so it didn't matter what Sega console you owned, you were going to have a Sonic game on it. Sonic was going to follow on every console, and even the Saturn. Yes, there was issues, but there was Sonic games released for the Sega Saturn that were great games, It was just magical. It just seemed like this was going to be how it was going to be, like Sega was going to be the ones that decided how video games were going to be, and they honestly were. For their time. Sega helped invent the video game rating system. They invented the newfangled game boxes that became the standard in the 2000s with the way they were designed. This was unique. Sega invented this kind of game box. Well, anyway, I hope you guys like my little tribute video to Sega. My name is SuperPat98. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Stay frosty.